Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome. Welcome to the Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. My name is Dr. Enolia, and I'm your host today. And we are going to meet Linda Vargas, who is a speaker, an author, a mentor, and creator of a beautiful methodology that I'm excited to introduce with her and through her. So, just to learn a little bit about Linda, she's a teacher, speaker, author, and mentor, and is dedicated to helping people achieve greater self worth, self acceptance, and a greater empathy for others. Did you pack your bag? A checklist for mental baggage. At the University of KZN and Durban University of Technology in South Africa, she lectured cultural diversity, gender violence, and interpersonal communication for 17 years. Inspired by her students, she wrote and published her book entitled Did You Pack Your Bag? A Checklist for Mental Baggage, which offers fresh perspectives on mental and emotional well being, relationship management, teaching and learning, depression, personal development, empathy, diversity, leadership, and parenting. As a guest speaker at the national and regional educational conferences in South Africa, she works to promote a better understanding of multiculturalism and diversity in education. Her presentations and staff development seminars for national and regional conferences for SAPA, NAPTOSA, and KZN Principals are informed by her book, Did You Pack Your Bag? A Checklist for Mental Baggage. Topics include personal development, diversity and multiculturalism, mental and emotional wellness, relationship management, leadership and teamwork, parenting and youth development. So at this point, I would love to introduce and have you say hello. Hello, Linda Vargas.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nolia. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. I'm in great awe of the work you do too. So looking forward to having a lovely chat together.
Thank you so much. And you know, when I asked you for your pictures for the show, you sent this beautiful, wonderful, strong picture of you doing the flamenco dance. And I absolutely, it's just breathtaking to me. It's so beautiful. So I'd
Thank you
love
so much.
to start by asking you where your inspiration from dance came from and how that came to fruition to being.
That's a beautiful question. I've danced all my life. At the age of 5, I was sent to ballet, classical ballet, to be a lady.
You're right, because that teaches you fluidity, it teaches you how to carry yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. I was taught grace. I was taught self-discipline. I was taught elegance. I was taught hard work. And I spent 20 years of my life as a classical dancer and a Chiketi ballet teacher. And I qualified as, went through all the qualifications and ran my own classical ballet studio for a long time. Um, and really enjoyed that journey because it was an escapist place of well-being. I've always found dance to be my home, my spiritual home. I go there to feel good, even though I'm working so hard. Because you work so hard with the body. But the
Yeah.
classical work taught me to just find that inner peace while you work, and so much more. And I had the most amazing classical ballet teacher, Eileen Keegan, who was one of the direct descendants of the teaching through the Maestro Cicchetti. So I really enjoyed having that side for many years. But then, I think it was the age of 15, I went to see a beautiful flamenco show. And living in South Africa, that was, funny enough, people think that's strange, but it was the norm because there was a lot of flamenco in South Africa in those early years. And I went and I saw this beautiful, magnificent show, and I said to my mother, I want to do that. I just immediately knew that was me. I think I wrote about it in my thesis. Sometimes one identifies with a culture that's outside of your own culture because it's part of your journey. And so I have only in my latter years realized that some cultural things are assigned and some we choose. And I chose that art form, living very far away from Spain. And at 18, I qualified as a flamenco dance teacher. And I then went to Spain for many, many years, many trips, studied with all the great maestros. My word, I was so blessed. I have been so blessed to have had the most magnificent teachers. And I always feel that if you have been blessed to have had beautiful teachers, it's your obligation to stand on their shoulders, do better, and give thanks every day that you had that blessing of having good teaching, because I don't think we reach and achieve what we achieve without good teachers. And so I had brilliant, amazing teachers in the classical world and the flamenco. And so I've never really known a life without dance. I've danced all my life. I've danced when I'm happy. I've danced when I'm sad. I've danced when I'm depressed. I've danced when I'm rich, when I'm poor, when I'm lonely, when I'm, you name it. And I think so many of my lessons are infused with that knowing that I learned to experience through the body and the soul and the mind, which dance teaches you so beautifully.
So I want to actually go there with you because having danced in a dance company myself, and it was modern and jazz,
Yeah.
okay, and in college, one of the things that I noted was that dance transcends. And you've had the opportunity to study with great ones. And
Yes.
so I guess my question is that how did spirituality enter into your dance? Because when I say that dance transcends, it takes you to another place. And
Well,
when you're learning it, it just, yeah.
well, it's a beautiful way of putting it, but I have always said to my students that I'm closest to spirit
Mm.
the most when I dance. When I dance, there is like no separation between me and spirit. And I've always stepped on stage, stepped into a teaching space, stepped into any role in my life. I consider myself channeling spirit. But the most beautiful and the most authentic and real is when I dance. And I often say to my students, show me how you dance, I'll tell you who you are. And for me, even I have the blessing of having a beautiful son who's a professional dancer. And I've taught him from very young to step up on that stage and channel. And once you learn to do that at a young age, it becomes effortless and natural, and it's not something that you even think about, you just do it. And it's the same thing that happens to me now when I go into the teaching and mentoring, and when I lecture, I go into that space and allow myself to learn as I teach. And so receive as I give. It's that continual flowing of this beautiful spiritual awareness that we're surrounded with and is within us. And it's just that dance between the two. It's in us and it's going out, and it's out and it's coming in. That's what I've experienced. So I experience no separation when I dance. And I think that's helped me understand my spiritual nature and my spiritual existence and essence, probably more than anything else. Because I do go into, I think, the purest state of who I am when I dance.
Yes. And that's what I was asking about.
Yeah,
That's the transcendence.
yeah.
That's the
And
epitome of
I just chose flamenco because it ultimately, I chose flamenco to be my medium I spent many years teaching. I became an international dance examiner. I co-founded an organization that I teach and examine all over the world. Sorry. And I started my own organization called Stamp Dance, which I use for helping people to foster social cohesion in multicultural environments. And flamenco for me was the one that gave me the most freedom of expression, the ability to work with very strong energies as well as very vulnerable energies. So it's a continual dance of me being me and not being something that I'm. Classical ballet, I found I was trying to be something that I wasn't naturally. I had to pretend to be weightless. I had to pretend to be not of this earth. In flamenco, you really use that art form to be you and to explore you. And I really discovered who I am in my essence through the medium of flamenco. So I've used it as a tool now in many of I did my master's education in multicultural education, where I adapted flamenco for the multicultural classroom in order to bring people together who were different cultures in a way that it wasn't culturally bound, because I think a lot of dance forms are culturally bound. And it was the one that gave me the most potential to deconstruct the culture and use it as a tool for personal awareness and growth and empowerment. And so that journey for me has been a long one through flamenco. So I absolutely, I'm so grateful for that tool. Because in its essential nature, in its origins, flamenco was very cathartic. It was supposed to help you heal.
Right.
And I've gone back to that whole concept of using flamenco to heal. But for many years, I used it just to perform and to become aware of who I am and to connect with spirit. So I had a wonderful journey just by myself through flamenco before I started using it as a tool for others.
When you talked about the multicultural piece and how it just allows you to really drop the cultural boundaries that typically come with dance, how did that work with you, knowing that you went into this evolution of unpacking mental baggage?
I've had this wonderful journey. I've been so blessed. I've had this parallel career in education and the arts. And for me, they're one and the same thing. Because the arts are always teaching and learning, and education is teaching and learning. And so it's also channeling, for me. I find that when I teach, I say things in the moment that I've never said before, and I'm so surprised. And I then rush off afterwards and write them down because I think, wow, that was wonderful. I need to share that again and again. So I literally have transferred that channeling that I do in dance performance into teaching automatically. They're the same thing. So when I was lecturing cultural diversity at the university, I had many very diverse students. They were, in South Africa, we use terms that I hope nothing that I say today offends anybody. There's not my intention, but I can't speak my truth without possibly offending someone. And so
absolutely, Sam, we want you to speak your truth.
In advance, I apologize. But in South Africa, we had, obviously many people know this, we had the legacy of apartheid. And we used terms and labels like Black, white, Indian, Chinese, and all of us continue to use those terms. So when I was lecturing, I had probably 80% Black students, and I had Black and Indian students, and then I had international students from all over Africa, from China, as well as European students. It was very culturally diverse. And one of the, I was given a syllabus to teach, but I realized that I started to infuse what I did in dance into my lecturing without even realizing it. And I used to try and help my students become aware of how they have been socialized. And one day I walked into this lecture theatre of mine, and there were 400 students there. And it's quite challenging lecturing sometimes in South Africa because all the facilities aren't always that wonderful. And I didn't have a microphone. And so I had to use my dance teacher voice, which was very useful.
Yeah.
And sitting in the front row was this lovely Indian student. And he had his male student, and he had his feet up on the desk, and he had his phone in his hand, and he was leaning backwards with this very kind of casual, arrogant body language, which I read very well as a dance teacher. And I thought, oh, okay. And he said to me, so ma'am, what's your course about? And I went, whew. And immediately I just went into a state where I asked for help, and I always get it.
Yeah.
And I looked down, and I had a tog bag at my side, a black one. And I lifted it up and I said to him, well, young man, in my course, I'm going to take, I want you to understand that every single one of you is carrying a tog bag like this, in which you have all the thinking that your mother taught you, all the thoughts and beliefs of your culture, everything that you've learned from social media, everything that you've learned from your friends, everything that you've learned from your spiritual background. In my course, we're going to throw it all out, and we are going to have a look at it, critically reflect on it. And then I had another moment of inspiration, and I've never used this analogy of the bag up until then. And yet I had been informally doing it as a dance teacher, and I had been informally using it as a lecturer. But I've never used the analogy of a bag. It came to me in that moment, and I've been so grateful for it. Then I said to him, okay, and then once we've got everything thrown out of your old bag, I'm going to ask you to go and buy a new bag. And in that new bag, I would like you to consider the kind of bag that you would like to be. And I want you to choose one that reflects who you are. And then everything that's on this table that you've thrown out of your old bag, I would like you to say to yourself, I really like what my mother taught me about this, and we're going to put it in the new bag. And I really like what my school teacher said about this, and I'm putting it in my bag. And I really like what I learned from my imam or my priest. I'm going to put this into my new bag. I really don't like what this person said when I was wherever. I'm leaving that behind. And in other words, I was trying to create an atmosphere of critical thought and self-awareness, which I didn't realize at the time. And I then, as I finished saying that, I was quite shocked that I said that. I looked down and I had a beautiful bright silver bag, and I lifted it up and I said to the students, this is my bag. I have a background in theater and I love beautiful things. So I said, you can choose any bag you like. You can choose a backpack. And then I started to improvise. And I said, some people like to carry all their thinking and all their baggage behind them, and then they never look at it. Some of you might want a nice big suitcase because you've got a lot of baggage and you'd like to pull it along. And some of you might like a smaller bag. You choose the bag that you want. In other words, it's starting the process of who am I, and what is the thinking that is external to me and visible. Because when you carry a bag as a woman or anybody, that bag is probably one of the first things that everybody notices when you walk in. I've noticed that with a woman. Oh, nice bag, or oh, heavy suitcase, oh, gee whiz, your backpack is full.
Right.
And
right.
people don't even understand that the analogy of a bag as baggage is absolutely apparent in people's behavior. You could say, oh, I've got no, I remember meeting a man once and at a social occasion, and he said to me, oh, I've got no baggage. And the first thing I thought was, well, it's obviously not visible to you, it's visible to everyone else. And we are very often not aware of the baggage we're carrying, and it's only evident to others through our behavior, our choices, and the way we speak. And so I was trying to help the students become aware of the baggage they have and to become conscious of it, and then to consciously choose how they think and respond and shape their life. And I started to use that analogy for many years. And eventually I had students running up to me saying, "Oh, ma'am, I'm still unpacking my bag and repacking it, and I'm unpacking and repacking." And I used to think, oh. And they would thank me for that analogy. And because it's such a simple one, even a 3-year-old can do it. And then I started to use it with younger students, and I used it with parents, and I used it with teachers. And my varsity students eventually said to me, "Why don't you write a book?" And I said, "No, I'm not writing a book because none of you will read it." Because I don't have students who are enamored with reading. And so, no, we'll read it. No, we'll read it. What I was aware of is that many of them absolutely loved my approach, and they used to tell me that they ran to my lectures because they couldn't wait to get there. And I was obviously saying something that mattered. So I thought, okay, I will write a book. And I started to write it just before the pandemic. And there are powers that happen in this world which we don't always understand. But for me, it was the beginning of the new journey of, okay, let me write this book. So in order to write it, I had to reflect on my entire life. And I wrote this book as a gift to young people and those who take care of them, which is teachers, parents, business people. But it's actually for everybody. And it was how I had learned to unpack my baggage and how I'd learned to repack it and become more conscious, because I write in my book that I had spent many years of my life unaware of the human programs that I had unintentionally absorbed into my thinking. And my work is to try and, well, I started with myself. I had to work through the effects of living unconsciously. And as soon as I had done that, I felt compelled to help others unpack their thinking and beliefs and repack them in a more conscious way. So my work is not telling you what to think. Never. You can't tell a woman what to put in her bag. And when you go on an airline, the first thing they say is, "Did you pack your bag or did someone else?" And so I use the analogy, did you pack your thinking or did someone else? And if you are not conscious of where the thinking in your head has come from, it's very difficult to live consciously, because these programs just run. And so what I discovered when I started to do the work myself, and it became a very powerful, I realized as I wrote my book, I started to become conscious of my human programs when I became a mother. Because I started to think, what am I going to teach this beautiful spiritual being that's come into my life to share a part of his journey before he goes off on his? What am I going to teach him that is of value? And what would I say isn't? So I started to unpack my own thinking and thinking, oh, I learned this from my parents, but I'm not going to do that. And I learned this from and I'm not going to do that, but I am going to do this, and I'm not going to. So I started to learn to think more consciously as a mother, purely because I just loved my son so much. And I do think from a place of love, all of us do better. When you are working with the intention of love, I think our choices are pretty sound. And so I started to unpack and repack my own bag. So when I wrote the book for the students, there's a lot of what I learned about myself as a mother in the book. There's a lot of what I learned about myself as a dancer, and a lot of what I learned about myself as a teacher. Because I think also as you teach, you learn. Well, I do anyway. So the baggage analogy started with my students. I wrote it. I handed it to my son, who at that point was about 20, and I said to him, should I publish it? And he said, absolutely. I then got a colleague of mine who did all the artwork in it for me. She's one of South Africa's greatest artists. And she said to me, I'm doing the artwork for you. So she's done the most amazing, provocative artwork in my book. It was edited by a beautiful young 30-year-old who had a PhD from Harvard and a PhD from Cambridge. And she edited my book, and she said it changed her life, which I felt very honored to have had her edited. And my son wrote the foreword because I thought the proof's in the pudding. He can write what he likes about me at the beginning, and he did. And the rest of the book has been basically a gift, not only to self, but to all those who read it. And then I all of a sudden got invited to do staff developments at schools and conferences for principals, and go back into education and help other teachers and help other principals. And I use my book to unpack. So, if a teacher is standing in front of a class, if she's got a lot of baggage, she's going to unwittingly and unintentionally pass on that baggage to her students. And so my aim was to try and help teachers become conscious of their baggage and learn to manage it, and help students to be conscious of their baggage and learn to manage it, and parents to be conscious of their baggage and learn to manage it. So that's why
I really want to go back, because the significance of you sharing this and this methodology in South Africa is huge, especially because South Africa is still healing. South Africa is still healing from apartheid. And in terms of lecturing, in terms of crossing that cultural divide, how was it? How was your information received? How did you handle that aspect? And it's really important, because I want our audience and I want people to hear from an inside point of view coming out versus an outside projection of judgment in on what it was like.
Well, there's a heading in my book called Zen in the Trench, and I do a whole section on it. How do you stay Zen when you're in the trenches of teaching? And it's not easy. It's very easy to be Zen on a mountain, but when you need to be Zen in the trenches of diverse thinking, and particularly in South Africa, because we have a freedom of speech here that I think we take for granted. Students do not hold their punches. And they are very, they come up with some questions and some confrontations that if you haven't worked through your baggage, you are inadvertently going to react, be triggered, and it's going to be rather unpleasant. And so I had to think through, for instance, I was raised during apartheid as a white. And I've now been in South Africa over 30 years now. We are in a free democracy. And I feel, this is not what everyone feels, I feel we're doing really well. I think the people in South Africa are amazing with the work they're doing. Everybody is getting their hands dirty. They're not always getting it right. They are tackling the issues of racism. They are tackling the issues of gender. They are tackling the issues of diverse religions and spiritual faiths. So it can, from the outside, look a bit like that cocoon stage where it's mushy and messy. But I really do believe that South Africa is going to emerge as one of the world's success stories of navigating a new path in terms of racial relations. Is everybody doing this? Absolutely not, but there are an awful lot who are. So when I went into my lectures, I was very obviously a white older woman. And so I decided to say to my students, I'm so sorry, my darlings, you've got this old white lady and I'm talking racism. And So I
Yeah.
thought I would just own it, you know. I can't help the fact that I am the color I am, just like everyone else can't help the fact of the color that they are. We are assigned race, you know, we just get given that. And so I said to them, with that obvious thing that I'm a white person, I'd love you to ask me any question you'd like that you'd like to ask a white person about racism. And so this one boy put his hand up and he said to me, why are all white people racist? Thank goodness I had a moment of spiritual intuition.
Yes.
And I responded to him and I said, in a very calm way, which I was also thrilled. I always know that I'm getting the right answer when I'm calm. And I said to him, I know a lot of white people who are racist, and I know a lot of white people who aren't. I know a lot of black people who are racist and a lot of black people who aren't. I know a lot of Indian people who are racist and a lot of Indian people who aren't. I know a lot of Chinese people who are racist and a lot of Chinese people who aren't. That's not the point. The point in my lecture is how much of a racist are you and how are you managing? And what I realized in my classes is that, and post-apartheid, we've all been socialized into racial stereotypes.
Yes.
If you've learned certain things, you can unlearn them.
That's right.
And I thought, okay, so if that's, and it was one of the things that happened when my son was born, because he went to a multicultural school, which I wasn't blessed to have. I had a all white school. And when I sent him to school, I said to him, I had a very strong intention of never raising him with any racial rhetoric at home. Everybody was a spiritual being, and we interact with them as along those lines. And so that was my conscious choice of raising him. And one day he came home, and because we have very strong accents in South Africa, everybody thinks South Africans are all the same. We are so diverse, you can't even imagine, even our accent. The way we speak, the way we dress, it's the most wonderful melting pot of world cultures. Anyways, he comes home and he speaks to me with an Indian accent. So now I think to myself, okay, he's obviously picked this up. And I said to him, oh, have you had a new friend? Now he was 3, eh? Did you make a new friend at school? And he said, yes, I did. I said, oh, and was he? And I think, because I hear the accent, I said, oh, and was your little friend Indian? So he just swings around to me and he says to me, I don't know. He didn't have a bow and arrow. And I thought, instantly, race is learned and socialized.
It is. It is.
And he had been watching movies, American movies with Indians with bows and arrows.
Exactly.
And he didn't see this lovely young friend of his in those terms, so he couldn't be Indian. He hadn't even looked at skin color, let alone anything else. And I immediately thought to myself, that's how it is. We're socialized into race and racial stereotypes. And I then said to my students, you've asked me why all white people are racist. Would you like me to tell you how I was socialized into race? Because during apartheid, white people were kept very separate and they were brainwashed and socialized with a whole program that all of us are still struggling to unpack. Or not everyone's struggling, but we're working on it, you know.
Yeah.
And I said to them, as a young white girl, I was socialized into thinking and being told that all black people I must be scared of. They could possibly rape me, they could possibly steal, they could murder me, and I need to be very careful. And then I said to my students, is that right? Is that true? And they all went, oh, absolutely not, absolutely not. So I said, well, can you see how you were socialized and how I was socialized? And perhaps in this class, we're going to unpack that socialization.
There you go.
And repack it. And I do believe that race is, if you've grown up in a racially intolerant home, you really do need to unpack that race bag.
Mm-hmm.
I then had one student, he was a black student. And I said to him one day, because I gave them the project of choosing something from their background and their upbringing that's in their bag, that they were given, that they were assigned. In other words, some human program or belief system they were assigned. And to choose two things, or no, actually choose one thing that they would keep from their background and one thing that they would leave behind. And he came up with this very interesting sort of perspective. He basically asked why his mother was so racist.
Okay.
And how could he help her? And I had many of my students at the end of my course saying, we've got it, ma'am. What do we do with our parents?
Yeah.
And then I would say to them, well, you go back to your parents with the greatest compassion and the greatest understanding that maybe they didn't have the blessing of a tertiary education and a class with Linda, where they could
unpack their bags.
where they could unpack their racial socialization and where they could unpack it. And I said, because you've had that privilege, you go into the rest of the world with the greatest empathy for those who haven't had that opportunity. And when you come across somebody who's an abject racist, perhaps have a little bit more compassion and give them a bit of time to understand why. Now, I had another white friend of mine that I asked one day. He was an abject racist. And I said to him, why are you so racist? He then proceeded to explain to me that he had a business in about 4 different African countries, and he'd had to flee with just the shirt on his back in war. And as far as he was concerned, his personal experience justified his racism. And he said, I'm not taking that out of my bag and I'm not changing it. And so I thought, okay, who am I to tell this man? I haven't walked in his shoes. I haven't experienced what he's experienced. He'll come round eventually because he will discover that not all Black people are going to rape and steal his business and murder and whatever. He will discover at some point. And I used to say that to my students, please go out and make friends with different cultures. Make a friend from a Chinese culture. Make a friend from, if you're a Black person, find white friends, because you're soon going to realize not all of them are racist. Some of them are extremely racist. Some of them are not racist at all. And then you start to work together, and I think that's what's happening in South Africa. We are
Yes, it is
handling the race issue in a very messy way. Don't be so racist. Oh, you're right. But we say it, and then we say, but why do you say racist? And then they'll justify it. And the arguments and the interchanges are very passionate and heated, but they are real. And so I think from that point of view, and because we have the freedom of speech, there are opportunities to really get to grips with how we were racially socialized. And I'm so grateful to have had, when I did my master's degree, I also had to really unpack my white racism and how I had been programmed. And I did it so effectively with such an amazing professor who held a space for us all to do it. We were Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, atheists, Black, white, male, female, young, old, in this critical reflection group. And there was no holds barred. We could say what we liked. And sometimes things were said that were extremely painful. And I think for people to understand their socialization, they have to put themselves in a space where they are prepared to take the punches. Because sometimes we just don't know that we don't know.
right.
And I think if you want full healing, it's got to get messy before it heals. I don't believe in just putting like a plaster over a wound. I really think for the wound to heal, it's got to heal from the inside out.
I agree.
physiological. So you've got to heal from your inside out. It's not an educational program or a what are this or a what. It's not all these things that we're putting in place as a society. It's an inside job. And so I'd help people. I hold a space for the inside job. And people don't even know on many occasions that they don't know. Or there are people who say, I've got so much baggage, I have no intention of unpacking it until I die, and probably never. I'll do it next life. I said, okay, fine. You know,
Okay, fine, right.
you cannot tell someone to unpack their baggage if they don't want to. And
If
you
they
can't
don't want
tell them
to,
what to put in their bag. And you can't tell them what thoughts they should be thinking. And so that's my whole approach is, what are you thinking? Let's unpack, let's repack in an atmosphere of deep respect and empathy and laughter and humor, because I use humor all the time. And then when we've repacked, I said this to the students, once you repack this bag and you are now living consciously, don't start blaming the government and blaming your friend and blaming your parents and blaming your schooling. You are now in charge of this bag and your thinking and your choices and your programs that you are now consciously running. And it's a lifelong job. As long as you're on this planet, every day you've got stuff to take out and put in. And so
absolutely.
I do bag maintenance.
Yes. And you know what's so phenomenal is that many people are not willing to have the conversation. And this is why I love your program so much. And I love the approach of your program. And I love the fact that you have this conversation in South Africa. I've done retreats in South Africa. And, you know, in my retreat, I remember having 12 students, and they were all women, and 6 happened to be white, 6 happened to be Black. And they sat on separate sides. But by the end of the day, when you can transcend, or in your terms, unpack the bags, I use an analogy, walking barefoot, so that you can feel every step that you take, and you start being conscious of every step that you take. Because when you're barefoot, you know, you're conscious of it. When you have your shoes on, you're unconscious of it. You just walk, you don't care about where you walk. So by the end of the day, they didn't want to leave. They didn't want to leave. And so the key is that they want to have those conversations. They need space to be held for those conversations so that everyone can grow.
And many young people, particularly young people who I love working with, the young people are wanting our generation to have these conversations. And I keep saying to the young people, you know, I've been on this planet a long time. I have a lot of experience in human relations. And so there will be something that I will say that you might find useful. But you are also to say something that I will find useful, because you are the new gen. And the new gen has grown up in a very different world. You've grown up with technology. I did not grow up with technology. And so this whole social media that we're dealing with now is a whole new different vibe of baggage. My goodness me. You're literally packing your bag and unpacking it every time you go on social media. And so if you're not living consciously and you're not aware of the programs that are running in your head and where they came from, you are going to be swept up in a mass mesmerism or a group think. You're not going to think for yourself. You're going to think what everyone else in your little chat group is thinking. And I think that, I think one of the things I wrote at the end of my book, when I gave my suggestions for a checklist, is that you learn to leave your village. You know, in Africa, if you leave your village and you go somewhere else, one of the things I'd said to my students in South Africa, because there was a lot, at that time, there was a lot of xenophobia, and there was terrible, terrible hate crime for foreigners from Mozambique and from Zimbabwe.
Right.
And that was black on black violence, but very xenophobic. And I said to my students, and they would tell me they don't want those people here, they must go home, which is the whole migrant issue that we're dealing with now. We don't want these people here, they must go home. And I said to them, if the situation was reversed and your country is at war and your country is in turmoil and you seek refuge in their country, how would you like to be treated? And, oh, it'll never happen. And I said, and when it does, come and see me. because life is this amazing thing that we participate in, but we're also swirled around in.
Right.
Things happen. COVID happened. Every single one of us, it affected the whole planet. And how it affected us is just like our bags, very uniquely. Depending on where you're at and the stuff that you're dealing with, you experienced COVID at a completely unique level. And I think that's how we experience life. Your experience of racism is not mine. And so in having these conversations where we talk about our experiences and we understand them from a much higher, more spiritual level and a conscious level, the work then starts from the inside. And I keep saying that to the students. It's not about everyone else, it's about you. You've got to start with you. When you are getting busy with getting messy with your bag, you're going to have a lot more empathy for everyone else. And a lot more compassion for everyone else. Because sometimes when you meet these people that are just so dysfunctional, I've got a lovely little picture here. I must just show it to you. I think I put it here. When you're walking along, I don't know if you can see it. When you're walking along like that, with your back all bent and buckled with your baggage, I mean, it's time to do an unpack.
It is. It absolutely is.
And people with baggage are dysfunctional. They are angry, they are disillusioned, they're depressed, you name it. All of those things are signs of baggage, and nobody wants to go there. And the psychologists and the psychiatrists of this planet are doing the best job they can, and I'm grateful for all the work they do, but most of them don't have the time to see everybody. So my work is become your own mentor and your own, your own. When I taught people to dance, I used to tell the children, become the boss of your body. Well, the bad work is become the boss of your thoughts. It's learning to take control and live consciously. And so you then say, oh my gosh, I didn't do so well today. And then when you don't do so well, I'm sorry is a very useful word. I'm really sorry. I'll try it better next time. And then you try and you get it all messy. You know, it's a dancer's thing. When you get a correction from a teacher in your dance about the first time, you try and then you try again and you try again and you try again. Normally about the fifth or sixth time, the student comes to you and says, oh, you got it. So when you do mental baggage, it's no different. And it's that daily awareness of how you are interacting with people. And when you're doing a good job, everyone else is so grateful. You become a light in the world.
You do.
You become what I describe as somebody with a very small bag and you're traveling light. You are very aware that you've packed your bag and no one else did. And you then are available to help others who are carrying heavy baggage. So I say to students, don't go and ask someone for help who themselves needs help. Go to someone who's radiating light and who knows and who's done the work, at least a lot of it, who's unpacked and repacked and unpacked and repacked a lot. And when I was doing my staff development workshops with my teachers, I love working with teachers. They would come up with all sorts of stuff. And they then said to me, you need to have some tools. So I said, okay. And I came up with 3 tools, which I started to practice in all my staff developments. And they loved it, absolutely loved it. And they're very simple, the 3 R's and the 3 D's and the 3 U's. And then only in the last short while have I come up with 2 more rules, which deal with the spiritual aspect. In other words, once you've finished unpacking and repacking your human programming, there is another level of awareness that all of us are struggling to understand. And that is, who are we as pure consciousness, and who are we as quantum beings, and who are we in terms of spiritual understandings. And so that level of understanding is another 2 tools. So I work with everybody depending where they're at. If they come in at the very beginning, not even knowing that they have a bag, then we start there. I start wherever anyone comes in. There's no judgment. There's no me telling anybody what to think. There's no me saying, you're wrong.
Right,
I love that.
exactly.
You're wrong. I do believe there is a certain level of wrong, because this is another picture in my book. Look at this. I love it. The artwork in my book is so beautiful. I wanted to show you this one. There is a level of human programming. If you are carrying thinking, I write in my book, in the privacy of your own mind, you are free to think what you like. But when your thinking and your choices start having a negative effect on your own well-being or the well-being of others, it's time to do an unpack and repack. And I call them explosive ideologies. Don't you just love this? When you're the one in the airplane with an explosive in your bag, and everybody else has got to live with you and put up with those explosives, you know, that you explode every half hour.
Exactly, exactly.
And so I help people understand, well, what's your explosive ideology? That's not personal. Everyone's got a different explosive. And so it's the inner work that I do that allows you and frees you to get to the spiritual work, which the rules of the game change as soon as you go there.
Exactly, exactly.
So
I
that's that.
love, oh, go ahead.
So that's the work I do. I get my
Yes.
hands messy, and I do it with love and with joy, because I really know how awful it is to have that baggage of negative programming. And
Yes.
one of the things I put in my book as a parent, those parents who, it was good enough for me, so it's good enough for you. You
I,
know, and I call them that they press the repeat button, you know, okay,
yeah,
repeat without thinking, and they hand their baggage to the child without even checking their own bag, and then the kid picks it up unwittingly and unintentionally, and then starts to become dysfunctional, and then teachers have to deal with them at school, and then they go into marriages and they're dysfunctional, and what it doesn't
it
matter
just
when
goes
you
on and
start.
on and on.
My
Yes,
theory, just start.
yes.
Just
I
start,
absolutely
and then enjoy
love,
the ride. Don't see
yeah,
yourself as a flawed being, because you're
yeah,
not flawed. You just have had a whole lot of programs that you unintentionally absorbed. And I think
exactly.
once we do that, because I really do this work because I want people to know who they are. Self-knowledge is probably the most powerful tool you'll have. And then I want inner individual freedom, global freedom, inner peace, and global peace. That's why I'm doing it. Because if you
Exactly.
can't get that until you get that at an individual level.
You're absolutely right.
When you find peace and freedom within yourself, you help others, and then they help others. And that's how we get it. It's not some
And
government
that's the
program.
ripple effect. That's the amplification of all of the work that we do. Your work is absolutely phenomenal.
It is.
I want you to share the names of your books. And I would love if you would we're coming up on an hour, so I would
Yeah.
love if you would let people know how they can reach you, how they can find out about your programs, and where they can reach you.
Did
Did
you
you
pack
pack
your
your bag?
bag? A checklist for mental baggage. And if you notice it's landscape, when I got a lovely 20-year-old young man, I said to him, come on, design me a cool book that you'd like to pick up, that you can put in your tog bag. And he did. And so it's had the input of many beautiful light people. And it was given as a gift to the world. And now all the work that I do is a gift. But as much as I give, I receive. So I just love the work I do. I just love the work. I love people. I love working with people. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what your socioeconomic, I don't care your age, you name it. I don't care how much baggage you've got. In fact, the ones with the most baggage are the most fun. I love those. I would like people, if they found that my message resonates, or they'd like to get hold of my book, it's on my website, and it's also on Amazon. But I would love to have the opportunity of working with people in person or one-on-one on a Zoom call, because the more I do that, the more opportunities we have for making a better world. I just feel I'm at that point in life now where there's no point in sitting moaning about everything. You've got to get into the trench, make sure you're zen and your baggage is light and you packed it, and then let's get our hands dirty and let's all work for a better world. And so wherever I'm called, wherever I'm invited, I would love to do it. Obviously, I'm based in South Africa, but I travel all over the world. I might be moving to Spain. I probably am, in which case I might be based there very soon. So yes, wherever I'm called, the work is out there, and I thank you and earlier for giving me this opportunity. Your work is amazing, and may you be blessed in your path, and may everybody who's listening to this wonderful podcast be blessed, because that's the intention. It's to help everybody. You know, the last line of my book says, life is supposed to be fun. And if you're not having fun, unpack your bag and find your fun.
I love it.
A dancer, you know, go to a dance class.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes.
Go and play music. Go play some tennis with your friends. Go and do something that reminds you that life is fun, and then do the bag work as well.
There you go. I love it. Linda, thank you so much. What a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And I have to tell you that I know that this podcast will help somebody. There's very few episodes where we talk openly about race, where we talk openly about relationship, where we talk openly about unpacking the mental baggage that we're all coming from. This is serious personal development. This is the foundation by which you stand on. So all of you entrepreneurs out there, all of you corporate people out there, all of you staff development teachers, whether you're in corporate or otherwise, this is the work that needs to be done, because when you're a better person, you execute your gift, whatever that is, in a better way. So I want to thank you, Linda. Yes.
May I add one thing? What I found really useful in my work is me coming in as an outsider. Mm-hmm. I'm not working in the institution or in the company or in the school. I come in as an outsider. I have permission to hold that space without the baggage of the day-to-day runnings of that place. Right. And so the work is very effective when you just come in with that spiritual intention of holding space for healing, which I do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you so much, Anolia, and bless you in your work. And look forward to whenever.
Bless you. And this has been another episode of The Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. If you like this episode, please like us. If you really feel good, please subscribe to us. And please do share. Somebody will benefit from this conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Bless you, darling. Bye.
Bye-bye.